This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by trainer Tony Sims the morning after a superb performance from his charge, Conor Benn. Tony, congratulations on what I said, as I'll say again, was a superb victory from Conor last night. Reflect on it for as short as a time as what it was.
Yeah, as I say, we was expecting a tough fight with Vargas, and if you look who he's fought, Virtual Tears last time out, he went 6 rounds with him. Luis Colosio, the fight before that, he went split decision with him. Danny Garcia went 7 rounds with him. Errol Spence, was it 4 or 5 rounds with him? So if you look at who he's fought, obviously we was expecting a tough night, and Conor Benn prepared for the tough night, and but 82 seconds it lasted, and as you say, you don't get paid for overtime in this game.
Mentioning that 82 seconds, Tony, I know it's a small amount of time to dissect, but from what you did see, what pleased you the most about Conor's performance?
Just like his composure all week in the hotel, his confidence in his ability now. He started to believe in his ability. You got to realise that, like, I'm watching him day in, day out in the gym, and I know what he's got in his locker. I know how talented he is now, and there's a lot more to come still, and that's the great thing. He's like 24 years of age. There's still loads more of improvement to come, and I think in the next year or two you're going to probably see the best of him, and he's going to be going to fighting some big names and onto the world stage, and it's going to be an exciting journey watching him.
How much of a statement was it from Conor last night, Tony? As you said, you thought it would be a much tougher fight. Everybody thought it'd be a tougher fight than what it ended up being. But with that statement win now, what type of message does that send out to the rest of the welterweight scene?
It sends out a big message, because look, Vargas had a lot of notice for that fight, and he told everyone he had the same notice that Conor Benn did, and you can see in his you could see in his physique and in the way he was talking that he was very confident of beating Conor. He didn't think Conor was experienced enough to be in the ring with him, and we see what he done to Khan. He had Khan on the floor in that fight. A couple of times he had Conor actually in the fight, and so the message sent out that and he had a box well and won on points. It was still a great victory. But it's like I said before in the interviews, if he knocks Vargas out, then he steps into the bracket of Garcia, Spence, Virgil Ortiz. But not only has he knocked him out, he's knocked him out in 82 seconds, which all 3 of them couldn't manage. And you got to realise, like, Vargas has never been knocked out on the floor. It's always against the ropes. But I think if Michael Alexander don't jump in where he jumped in there, that would have been a proper knockout on the floor.
Tony, moving forwards, then you mentioned that's the type of win which puts him in there with the likes of a Garcia, the Spences, and what have you. He's called for the Amir Khan fight. He's called for Cal Brook, but Amir Khan seems to be the name he's spoken about most. You more than happy for that fight if it could be made?
Yeah, we got to sit down and speak to Eddie and what his next fight's going to be, and I'm believing it's going to be around July time in the summertime. So he's going to have a few weeks off, and then I'll sit down with Eddie and go through his next fight and who it's going to be. But obviously, chucking the big names up there, and brings, as you say, he's brought attention to overseas as well. Like everyone, has obviously heard about that sort of statement that he made, and obviously the big names of which he'll want to fight down the line. But obviously, there's still learning fights to do, and we still got to do quite a bit in the gym yet. And as I said, he ain't finished our article yet, and he knows that himself. But I think the improvements he's made has put him onto that sort of world stage now.
Just on Amir Khan, Tony, do you think it could be a realistic potential fight for him next?
if the numbers are there and the money's there, of course it can. I mean, you know, like Conor Benn last night was trending one on Twitter last night. He brought in massive numbers on Sky. You know, aside from the heavyweights like Joshua, Dillian White, he's bringing in the next biggest numbers. So if the money's there and like Khan's looking to have one more big fight, then, you know, Conor Benn probably is the ideal opponent because, listen, he brings in big numbers. Khan brings in big numbers. So, you know, a fight, maybe not his next fight, but he can definitely be made.
Tony, I know you're not one to kind of read too much into comments, but you've received a lot of praise on a personal note for the work you've done with Conor Benn. Obviously, you've taken him from somebody who doesn't have that standout amateur pedigree into somebody who's widely considered to be one of the next stars of British boxing now. What's pleased you the most with the work that you've been able to do with Conor from the beginning of his career to the point you've reached so far?
Well, it's like I've been saying, like with Conor, it's not like just like teaching a fighter and training a fighter because he wants to win. With Conor, he's desperate to learn. You know, he's desperate to learn. And he's like a sponge. He takes everything in. You know, he'll watch all his spars on the camera, take them home, watch them, watch the mistakes that he made and come back and correct them, you know. And with boxing, it's, you know, it's one of them sports where you have to learn, because if you don't improve and learn, you can get hurt in this game, you know, and you got to put 110% commitment into that. And like that's what he does. He puts 110% commitment into the boxing side of it. He does the same for the S&C side of it with Dan Lawrence. He does the same with his nutritional side of it. You know, everything he does revolving around his career, he puts 110% effort into it. And I think, you know, if you do that, then you can improve and you can go on to, you know, be a good fighter.
Tony, I've asked a couple of people this. I'm going to ask yourself the same question as well now. At what point do you feel like Conor was able to step out from being looked at as Nigel Benn's son and he started to kind of build his own profile and people recognizing him as his own fighter?
Yeah, well, there was a funny comment that Eddie Hearn said last night. Like, a lot of people at first were saying, like, this is Nigel Benn's son. And now they're saying, oh, that's Conor Benn's dad there. So, like, yeah, he's like stepping out the shadows, and like he'll step out of his father's shadow when he's won the world title, you know, and done the same as his dad and become a world champion. And like, there's not many sons that have emulated their fathers, but I do believe that Conor can be one of them. And you know, he's a great journey he's on, and a lot of people excited about the journey. A lot of people like listening to what he's got to say as well, because he speaks very well. And you know, I think he's showing in the numbers on Sky that he's pulling in that, you know, a lot of people are interested in watching him fight. And it's like Nigel was saying in his interview before the fight, there'll come one day where he may lose, you know, because every fighter has to come to that stumbling block. But it's like how you rebound and come back from that, you know. But at the moment, he's on an upward curve, and you know, obviously opponents are going to get better, and he's got to deal with that.
Tony, just to go backwards now, we haven't had a chance to speak since Ted Cheeseman's victory over JJ Metcalf. Just reflecting on what was an all-action fight for us as fans. From your point as a coach, how would you assess his victory?
Yeah, it's a great victory. You know, before the fight, everyone said that was a 50-50 fight. In fact, in the betting, Ted was the underdog in the betting. Metcalf was the favourite. And listen, Metcalf's a good fighter. As we're talking about fighters' sons, you know, like Shane Neary was a great fighter, you know, and you knew that JJ Metcalf was going to come in fantastic condition. You know, he could punch. And I think Ted showed that he has got quite a good boxing ability, because all people seem to sort of go back to is the night when he was getting hit loads by Sergio Garcia. But if you see the improvements he's making in his fight, what he managed to do with Metcalf, he managed to outbox him in the first half of the fight. And the little things that Ted does that people were not knowledgeable in boxing. Like he was slipping inside Metcalf's left jab, connecting with the left hooks, slipping outside his left jab, slipping the right uppercuts underneath him. He was the small little tricky things, and like in his jab, he was getting his jab to work lovely. And you know, I think he outboxed Metcalf in the first half of the fight. I mean, Metcalf was lucky to see out the fourth round really, and I think Ted recomposed himself in the middle rounds, and then boom, jumped on him and outfought him at his own game and got him out of there. I mean, the knockout was spectacular. And he's another one who's, you know, just turned 25, still a young man, still improving, still learning. He's got power, he's got speed, and, you know, and he's got a good career in front of him as well.
Tony, there's a lot of talk about, you know, that domestic scene at super welter. But in Ted's case, what is next for him? Is he looking to defend and try and win it outright, or will he look beyond that now and look to move up through the European ranks once again?
Well, that's another thing. I've got to sit down with Eddie, and then obviously we're going to go through, you know, the next fight for Ted. I'm thinking he was number 8 in the IBF before that fight, and Metcalf was number 5. So he must be jumping up a few places, maybe into the top 4, hopefully, of the IBF. So I don't know. We'll just look at that, you know, when I meet Eddie, and we'll look at that side of things, and maybe even make a defence of the IBF international title, which he holds. And, you know, we'll just look at that and have a look where he is. But, like, as I say, he's young. He's a young man who's still learning. And, you know, I think each fight you'll see him get better as well. And, you know, he's another one who trains very hard, the same as Conor. They both train hard in the gym, and, you know, they've got good careers ahead of them.
Just on kind of a couple of names at the domestic level, in case you guys stuck to kind of that route, Anthony Fowler, and we know Scott Fitzgerald's returning in May. Are those guys effectively one of those two if Ted was to stick around them on the domestic scene?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the domestic scene's a very good scene at that weight. You know, you've got Kieran Conway, you've got Scott Fitzgerald, you've got Anthony Fowler. You know, you got good names in that division and in this country, and you know, Ted's basically fought nearly all of them, and you know, I think Ted would like to sort of move on to the IBF world sort of scene and try and get in the door there. But obviously, if the money's right, you know, he would fight anyone on the domestic scene. I mean, with Fitzgerald's making a comeback in May, and I think Ted would like to fight Fitzgerald. If there was anyone that he would want to fight, it would be Fitzgerald, because obviously he holds a win over him on paper, and Ted felt that he won that fight. And, you know, he would like to get back in the ring with Scott and try and revenge that defeat. But we'll just see. He's got a lot of options. He's the British champion. He's the IBF international champion. So he's got a few options of what he can do next.
Now moving forwards to 2 weeks' time, we see Felix Cash, Denzel Bentley. Tony, how's Felix's preparations been going?
Yeah, he's trained really hard, and obviously he's been in the gym with the boys. You know, they've all been, you know, getting ready for their individual fights, and his conditioning's on point, and all his sparring's gone really well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Felix fighting Saturday week, and he's a fantastic talent. He can punch with both hands, and he's got great speed and boxing awareness about him. And you know, I think Felix, he's got a great future ahead of him.
It's a fight which is certainly kind of, it's caught the imagination of everyone. Everyone's kind of split on how they think it will play out. From a coach's perspective, from your perspective, what do you make of a pair of them when they will be in the ring? How do you expect it to play out?
Oh, you know, Denzel's a good fighter. He's unbeaten. You can see he's a puncher. He obviously hasn't got the pedigree that Felix Cash has got from the amateur rankings. Obviously, Felix has boxed all around the world for GB. And, you know, so he's lacking in that pedigree. But, you know, as a pro, he's a decent domestic fighter. And, you know, you can't take him lightly. You know, he's very awkward and he can punch, but I just think Felix Cash is like, you know, from what I see of him in the gym, and I know what his ability is. You know, he's ruthless in his attacks. He's got a great engine on him. You know, he's big on the weight, and he can punch. As I say, he can punch with either hand. So, you know, I'm expecting obviously Felix to go out there and get the win, and then move on to whatever's next.
Just a final couple of things to touch on before I let you go, Tony. Next weekend, we see Liam Williams challenge Demetrius Andrade for a WBO world middleweight title. Your thoughts?
I think Liam Williams has got a great chance. I'll rate Andrade. But I think Liam Williams is a tough customer. You know, when he gets into the nitty gritty, he can hold his own with anybody. And you know, I think I'm backing him for the win there. And you know, another domestic matchup it would be. Felix Cash wins the title, and then you know, goes on to eventually meet Liam for the world title, and that's another big domestic affair. So. Yeah, I'm edging towards Williams for the win.
All right, Tony, we will leave that there now. I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Congratulations once again on a terrific win last night and some recent success. I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Thanks very much, Andy. Thank you.